So you hit your serve and your opponents hit their return. Now it's time for your third shot. To drop or to drive? That's the question. You probably know that you should be using the drop. The problem is that when you try it, it usually ends up looking something like this or this. Don't worry though, the third shot drop is probably the hardest shot in pickleball to master. So it's totally normal to have trouble with getting the hang of it. That's where I'm here to help. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to become consistent with your drops and use them in your games. An important thing to know is that you'll never be an advanced player until you can use this shot. So if you want to improve, take the time to watch this whole video. It'll be worth it for your game in the long run. So, what is the goal of the drop? The goal of the drop is to make your opponents at the kitchen have to hit up on the ball so that you have an easier time moving forward and meeting them at the kitchen. The problem is that you have to have pretty good accuracy to be able to do what I just did consistently. And if you try it right now, a lot of the time you might be hitting the ball too high, like that, or you might just end up shy and hitting the ball into the net. In order to hit them well, you need to understand all the information I'm about to go through. The most important piece of this is where you aim your drops, which is probably a different spot than you think. That's coming up, but first we need to talk about technique. Which technique looks better to you? If you said example A, you're right. Less is more when it comes to your technique on your drops. You never want to be taking a big swing. The reason that we take big backswings on our other shots is for power. And on this shot, we're focused more on accuracy. So the big backswing is totally unnecessary. Try to use a compact motion like this. And I have my continental grip. And it's the exact same on the backhand, guys. I have my continental grip and I'm taking that short, compact swing. Nothing too complicated going on here. In terms of your swing path, it's literally just as if you're tossing the ball into the kitchen. The same thing on the backhand. And one of the most important parts to hitting your drop consistently is what you're doing with your wrist and your hand. So the main thing is that you want to always have a loose grip when you're hitting your drop. You don't want to be squeezing it super tight. So try to be squeezing your paddle at about a 3 out of 10 in terms of tension. This just makes your paddle more forgiving and it gives you better touch and control. The caveat to having a loose grip is that you don't want to flop your wrist when you're hitting the drop. Like I said, this is a shot of accuracy. So usually when we're extending our wrist, we're going for power. Try to have the loose wrist and hand, but keep your paddle nice and steady like this. This is gonna make you way more accurate. So this is a no-no. This is what we wanna do. See how my paddle's staying still as I'm going forward? And with that technique, you're trying to do what you can to make the ball hit the center of the paddle. If you're not hitting the center of the paddle, you're gonna lose just enough accuracy to where you might miss in the net or hit it too far. So this was what it looks like in real time. Got my forehand technique like this. Backhand technique, just like that. Very simple. I want to keep this as simple as I can on myself. And when it comes to spin on our drops, there's 2 main types of spin that we use. Topspin and slice. When we think about topspin, it's definitely a little bit trickier to get the hang of when we do it on our drop. So topspin is where we brush up behind the ball and make the ball roll away from us. So if you watch pros, they use topspin drops a lot. But I think if you're just getting started, it can be a little bit tougher to get the hang of it because there's just a little bit more going on in terms of rolling up the back of the ball. Slice is where you come under the back of the ball and make it spin towards you. So a slice drop looks like this. If you have the continental grip and you don't think about spin, you'll probably naturally end up getting slice on your drops. So if I were you, I would just focus on using that simple technique and not worry about spin. Whatever you get naturally is fine. What's more important is where you're aiming the ball, which I'm gonna go over. And guys, if you're trying to become an advanced pickleball player, you need to be consistently studying the game. So if you wanna learn more about pickleball, subscribe to our channel so that you see our new videos. Remember, the best players have the most knowledge. But back to where we should aim our drops. Where do you think you should aim your drops? If you said the back portion of the kitchen, you are correct. You don't want to aim for the middle of the kitchen because that increases the chances that you're going to hit the ball in the net. Remember, the goal of the drop is just to make our opponents hit up on the ball. So by aiming for the back portion of the kitchen, there is a chance that my opponent might be able to volley it like this, but they're still hitting up on the ball. So that's all I care about. I don't care if it bounces in front of them or not. So back portion of the kitchen gives us the best chance to make our drops consistently and make our opponents hit up on the ball. Looking at where the ball crosses the net, I think about this high over the net is ideal. So this is about 1.5 feet over the net. Don't need to be going super close to the net. If it's super close to the net, that's actually good, right? Because the ball is gonna bounce lower and they're gonna have to hit up on the ball. But this height gives you the most margin for error. So this decreases your chances of missing it in the net. So you see, by aiming for that back portion of the kitchen, I'm almost always able to get my opponent to hit up on the ball. And sometimes I'll accidentally hit it a little bit too short, which is fine because it still lands in front of him and he's gotta hit up on that shot. Sometimes I hit it too far, which is also fine. And try to see where the apex of my shot is. So the highest point of the path of the ball. It's around right above the kitchen, okay? You wanna make sure the apex isn't above the net. If the apex is above the net, the ball is gonna be too high and your opponent's gonna crush you. By the time the ball's over the net, it should be falling into the kitchen. So our apex is in this area. It's very important that we arc the ball over the net. If we try to hit too much of a line drive, it's gonna be very difficult to make our opponents hit up on the ball. So if I try to hit the shot as a line drive, I'm essentially hitting my opponent an easy shot. So a good analogy to think of is that you're shooting a basketball. If you shoot a basketball and you throw the ball directly towards the rim, it's just gonna hit the rim, right? To make it go into the hoop, you have to have that good arc so that the ball can pass clean through the rim. Same thing applies here. I need my ball to be arcing so that it goes down over the net and makes my opponent hit up on the ball. So we need that good arc every time that we hit a drop. And a good principle about where you're aiming, guys, is that it's always better to miss the ball too far than to miss in the net. Because think, I just missed in the net, right? I lose the point. If I miss too far, my opponent gets an easy shot, but that doesn't mean he's gonna win the point. If anything, I can actually just try to go for a drop on the next shot. So I missed too far, I go for a drop. Oh, I missed too far again, go for a drop. Now I can move in, right? So it's usually better to err on the end of hitting it too far, which is why I recommend aiming for that back portion of the kitchen. And something that a lot of coaches don't mention is that going cross court or down the middle actually gives you a little bit more margin for error when you're hitting a drop. Think, if I draw an angled line in the kitchen, the line is much longer than if I draw a straight line. So by going down the middle or cross court, I actually give myself a little bit more space to do what I want to do and make my opponent hit up on the ball. So you see I'm going cross court here on that left side using my backhand now. And you'll see the ball actually spends more time in the air too, which gives me more time to move forward because I have to hit it farther. So the cross court drop can be highly effective regardless of which side you're on. Another effective thing to think about when I'm hitting drops is that a lot of the time it makes sense to aim for your opponent's backhand. My personal favorite way to do that is by going down the middle to the player on the right side. Assuming they're righty, the middle is their backhand, and you can hit your drops right here, forcing them to hit a backhand, which just makes things a little bit more difficult. Most players aren't as good at being aggressive on their backhand, so it can make it a little easier to move forward. Also, by going middle, I could actually confuse my opponents. They might hesitate a little as to which one of them should take that shot. It can also make things easier for me. So remember, you want to get that good arc on the ball, apex around the kitchen on your side, aiming for the back portion of the kitchen, potentially going for your opponent's backhands and down the middle. And if this seems easier said than done to you, well, you're right. The only way you're going to master this shot is through practice. But not just any type of practice. There's specifically 2 drills that you need to use to get this down. I'm gonna go over those, but first I need to teach you the proper footwork. Footwork may seem boring, but it's probably the most important aspect of making the drop in consistently. The drop is a shot of accuracy, so if your positioning isn't perfect, it's gonna be really hard to make your shots in consistently. So before I get into the technique of the footwork, just know that the goal of our footwork is to catch the ball out in front in the same spot every single time, so right about here, and we want to be able to rock forward through the ball. So with my feet, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get this position on my forehand and this position on my backhand. So you wanna be able to rock forward through it. And you never wanna hit the ball behind you, always nice and out in front. So there's a few key rules to follow if you want to make this happen every single time. The first is you don't want to move forward after you hit your serve. So obviously you have to let your opponent's return bounce. So by moving forward, you're just making that shot more challenging for yourself if they happen to hit the ball really far in the court. So this is no on your serve. This is yes. So you want to stay back right here behind the line, about here. Rule 2 is that you want to get into position early. So the second I see where my opponent's return is going, I want to get to that spot as quickly as I can, so I'm catching the ball right here. So like that. So I don't want to be getting there just in the nick of time. I actually want to get there and wait for that shot. When I get there, I might even want to take a few extra adjustment steps so that I can really catch it perfectly right where I want it. Let me show you how that looks again. Rule 3 is something that I've never heard any other coach say, and it's that if your opponent hits a really deep return, which happens a lot, you actually want to back up early so that you can still rock forward through the ball. What you don't want to do is back up and hit this shot on your back foot. You're going to lose all your accuracy if you're falling backwards. You want to keep everything that you can the same and try to keep your momentum going forward whenever you can when you hit this shot. The main thing is that with your footwork, you want to isolate every variable that you can, so you're pretty much hitting the same shot every time whenever you hit a drop. This is especially important when you're getting started. If you watch pros, you'll see them using topspin drops, slice drops, maybe they're doing a drop on their back foot, but they're pros and they've practiced all these shots a ton. So when you're getting started, you want to get really good at hitting the drop one way, and that's how you're going to get consistent with it. Okay, so we're going to play a little game now. I'm going to hit a serve and my drop, and I want you to try to determine whether or not I did a good job or bad job with my footwork. If you think I did a bad job, try to guess what I did wrong. Let's get into it. If you guessed bad there, you're right. What I did wrong was I moved forward after my serve, so when I hit my drop, I was having to back up. That one was pretty good. I got in the right position, rocked forward through the shot, my ball landed in the kitchen, which allowed me to move forward. That one was also good. My opponent hit a deeper, higher return, so I backed up a little bit so that I could still move forward through my drop, and I was able to move forward. How do you actually learn this shot though? Like I said, this shot is tough. If you were to just watch this video, then go back to your normal playing schedule, your progress will probably be slow. To get this done quick, I highly recommend doing the drills that I'm about to go through. This first drill is perfect if you're just learning the drop. So all I'm gonna do is start off at the kitchen with my partner. And I'm gonna slowly start to back up using my drop. Once I start to miss, this is where I'm gonna stop until I get the hang of it. Obviously, you need a good partner to do these drills, so make sure to send this video to your partner. But I'm gonna slowly start to progress back, doing my drops, and trying to maintain my consistency as I get back closer to the baseline. Something important to note is that if you can't dink, you can't drop. They're very similar shots, right? But the goal for both is to try to make the ball land somewhere in or near the kitchen so that your opponent can't hit hard. So if you can't dink, you can't drop. If you need to learn how to dink too, we have a full video on that as well. So I'm gonna start off dinking, and I'm gonna slowly back up. If you're getting good at it, you can do this until you're all the way at the back like this. So I'm practicing my drops now from the back. It can just be a lot easier to start up close rather than starting all the way at the back, because it's a little bit easier to get the ball in the kitchen when you're close to the kitchen. Our second drill is just one up, one back. So essentially the end of our first drill. And this is probably the most important drill when you kind of have the shot down, but you need to get consistent with it. So all I'm gonna do here is focus on my footwork, and my partner is gonna start to make things more and more difficult as the rally progresses. So when you're getting these shots in games, they're not always gonna be easy, right? So as the rally goes on, your partner should start to make their shots harder and harder, which forces you to have to get in position quicker, and it gets you better at responding to more challenging shots on this shot. And it's totally fine if you miss in this drill. You just wanna make sure that you're trying your best, doing everything you can to stay consistent. So remember, this is the shot that requires a lot of practice to get really good at it. The two main places that you'll go wrong, and that I see so many players getting wrong on their drops, are, like I talked about, using too big of a swing and using too much wrist, that's just gonna make your control really bad, and it's gonna be hard to get the shot to land where you want it. So remember, compact swing and use very little wrist. And then what we just went over, your footwork. If you neglect your footwork on the shot, everything's gonna be more difficult and you're never gonna be in the right position, or you're rarely gonna be in the right position. And like I said, if you can't dink, you can't drop. So if you need to learn how to dink, watch this next video.